Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, the usual suspects here from More Important Issues. We've got Caleb Mitchell, one of the co-hosts of More Important Issues here. Caleb, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing well. I'm ready to talk some Tennessee basketball. I assume is on the. I haven't looked at the outline. If you sent it,
Tennessee golf. If you'd checked, we're doing a deep dive.
Good. I'm all prepared on that team. So dialed in. But yeah, I'm excited. I know I did see some tennis retweets. If you don't want, I don't know what they won, but it must have been big if it was popping up on my timeline. So we could talk that if you need.
I got kicked out of tennis camp when I was in second or third grade. My parents tried to see if, hey, maybe tennis might be something. Tennis didn't sit with me because tennis required you to play within the lines. And I was just someone who was trying to hit home runs because I was also playing t-ball, playing Little League. And I just didn't understand the whole, let's keep it right in there. Don't hit it too hard. Just hit it a little bit over the little fencing area. I'm just trying to rear back
Johnny McEnroe on him and got ejected?
It was just it did not work. And that was it. I did a week, and the awkward thing was he was a neighbor, and the neighbor being the coach, and then being like, hey, Chase doesn't need to. Tennis isn't going to be Chase's thing. Let's just go ahead and wrap this one up. This is not going to be his thing. But also here, producer of More Important Issues, Mr. Joey Boots, Joe Niblick. Where did that nickname come from, sir? I've never asked you this.
Caleb, you might have been the first one probably to adopt it.
I think so.
Being boots on the ground, always active on campus life, and always having the first little, hearing a little birdie say something. Usually it came to me first, so I guess it kind of just stuck after being boots on the ground.
I was gonna see if you remembered. I don't. The first event that we were like, hey, we need you to go and report live for us. We need you boots on the ground. I want to say this seems too late, but the Kentucky food fight, I think, might have started it.
That was my first thought. I thought after I took some videos and, because I think everyone was planning for that one to be a really big camp out. So it was kind of like, hey, I'm going early. I'll get some video. I'll be the boots on the ground. And it was just like Joey Boots, and it kind of stuck.
That's awesome. I did not know it was going to be a literal thing, literal boots on the ground. I like it. What's your best, now that you're wrapping up your last season, or last semester at Tennessee, what's your favorite Tennessee memory going into this last year from boots on the ground?
The easy one's obviously 22 Bama, but I think my favorite kind of boots on the ground, we let's see, I guess last season went to Lexington for that basketball game in Rupp. The absolute shootout. I think it ended up being 105-98 or something like that. But we got fake student IDs, fake student tickets, pretended to be Kentucky fans, and then just jack it off in the student section wearing all orange. So that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun to be able to not only go do all that, but then walk out of there with the win as well. That was definitely a really good memory. I'll remember that one for a while.
You got some confidence, man. I couldn't do it. There's no way I'm walking into a rival student section and pulling that one off.
Yeah, I had to take some convincing. At first I was like, I really don't want to fight, 10,000 fans, but you know what? It just had to, and we weren't that bad. We were humble to the people. We luckily had some people around us that were very nice, so they kind of stood up for us.
If only Tennessee could play John Calipari every weekend, and hey, I don't know if Tennessee would ever lose again.
He doesn't know if he's home or away anymore. He's got to have a handler now.
Goodness gracious. First thing though, I want to pick y'all's brain on that. I'm curious where y'all stand on this, because this is something that I've been thinking about this week, because it's surprising and not surprising in different ways, but it speaks to what I've said is the best aspect of the Josh Heupel era on Tennessee, is that the floor is so high now here. The floor is very, very high. I have questions about the ceiling, but the floor is high. And that's a good place to be. It's a good place to be. And it speaks to the 2025 CFP national championship odds in the SEC, where Tennessee is at 4th going into next year behind Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and then Tennessee. And I don't know. It kind of caught me off guard a little bit because Joe, Caleb, and I talked last week about what our questions are going into next year, and a lot of it's offense. And I think it's fair, and the schedule is gonna be harder. Going to Bama, going to Florida, obviously Georgia early, Syracuse and Atlanta won't be a pushover to open the year, but I don't know. When you hear that, Joe, that they're the fourth best CFP odds of anyone in the SEC in 25, did that catch you off guard, or does that feel about right that you think this team could be one of the four best again?
I mean, I think you're kind of right. It kind of reflects back to Josh Heupel being able to set the precedence where it's like, even in a year where we're kind of shaky, especially like you said, returning on offense, like your floor is still like floating around that 4 or 5 spot in the SEC to be able to return that level of talent, even though you really don't know a lot because you just haven't seen a lot of what's going to compose that wide receiver room next year. But I mean, I think it just speaks to his system that, you already have to assume that they're going to be that elevated in terms of talent and what he's been able to do, because you kind of have set that precedence that it's going to be a good team. They're going to contend for a CFP appearance, and they're going to be towards the top of the SEC again. So, for what it's worth, I definitely appreciate a 4 spot and, that positive outlook towards next year.
What about you, Caleb?
I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, it feels, when I think about it, it probably feels right. It's obviously good to hear. Like, you're like, all right, there's probably, like, maybe I'm too close to the fire and I can't see the bigger picture.
Like, we're too cynical. Like, the bettors know something. Like, you feel better. You're like, I'm glad that other people see me are more positive about this, and I'm more cynical in this.
Right. And then I kind of think about it. I'm like, well, in the SEC, that fourth best odds in the SEC, that's not all that surprising. I mean, I think when you look at Texas, who the way you listed them off, I'd assume is best. They don't.
Mm-hmm. Texas and Georgia are like right there. They're
They're kind of hoping they have a quarterback.
Yeah.
Georgia, they're now trying to find a new identity after this season where they didn't have an offense, or didn't have an offense, but couldn't find wide receivers that catch football. Now their quarterback's gone. They're in the search of an identity. Alabama is very much in search of a new identity since Nick Saban left. They never really fully found their footing this year. It's like they'd have games where you're like, they did, and then they'd lose to Vanderbilt, who was not good no matter what people tell you. So I mean, like, even being behind them, you're like, oh, those questions, I guess, make sense. And then does Ole Miss have another $25 million to spend? I mean, we'll find out. Florida is going to hope and pray DJ Lagway can win games by himself, win 10, 12 games, which, I mean, on the back end of the season, maybe he can. I don't know. Texas A&M, I don't want to call them fraudulent, because the two teams I've called fraudulent postseason are now playing for the national championship. But I mean, there's just nothing there for me to say, yeah, they're the real deal. Brett Venables, is he fired after this year? Probably mid-season 2025, the way things wrapped up. I guess you get that win over Bama, makes you feel better, but they're ready to get rid of him, right? Am I crazy?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the defense was really good. Like, the defense, he's doing that. I mean, he hired Ben Arbuckle from Wazoo, who has been elite up there, and he's super young. And you get John Mateer, who is the best transfer portal quarterback available. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I've already penciled that in. It's like the Oklahoma game at home in Neyland, I think, is going to be the toughest home game outside of Georgia for Tennessee in 25. Yeah, I think Oklahoma's offense is going to give them problems.
I mean, you're right about it probably being the toughest. And then you have
I think
South
Carolina.
Back.
Is my broader point. Is I don't think Venables has to worry about it, because I think they're going to be better next year.
Fair. South Carolina, they will be really, really good in the month of November. Can they be decent in September, October? Who knows? Like, they could be god awful and
they're way down the list, by the way.
So I think they have to be the hardest team to pinpoint based on Shane Beamer so far.
Yeah,
in his tenure. Like, you never know what you're going to get until November.
I mean, they're right there. I mean, Mizzou at 100-1, which they're below Florida, Oklahoma, Auburn. Like, Mizzou just falling off a cliff here. If I'm a Mizzou fan, I'm a little bit nervous with how this past year went. And
you got to find them first.
The what?
You got to find those Mizzou fans first, which Landon's really good at finding them on Twitter. It's pretty impressive.
Poor Mississippi State, 1,000-1.
Just cancel the program.
Oh my goodness, just terrible. I don't know, man. It's It's tough because the most optimistic take on this is just to get to that 4 spot. I mean, I think there'll be 4 SEC teams in the CFP next year, but the Tennessee stuff, I like that. I don't know how to explain it. I just like seeing that they're in that 4 spot because I'm like, maybe I am overthinking where this offense is going to be in 25. Maybe I am overthinking because I am still very much in on this defense because I think this defense is going to be even better than what we saw a year ago.
Well, I think you're just right about your initial statement kind of leading into this is that, and I'm not saying Tennessee's floor is being the number 4 SEC team when I say this, but Josh Heupel has raised the floor and being the 4th best team in the SEC in a year that you're like, a lot of questions about this team. There's just a lot of questions about a lot of other SEC teams. And so where I see our floor at, I'm like, yeah, that's a possibility. Now, I don't know if our floor is the 6th best team, 7th best. Like, could it be? Maybe. But I mean, in a competitive league, and I know the SEC doesn't look like the premier league in college football this year, and that's fine. It's still the most competitive top to bottom. Like, you cannot argue that statistically. So it's a very competitive league, and right now you want to go into every offseason knowing you're in the top half like that, and then you fight it out from there, and you acquire the talent in the transfer portal to get better. And if you're in the top third, even better, which Tennessee finds itself potentially in right now. So I think your floor has been raised over the last few years, and I think your floor is very easily top half, maybe top third.
Yeah. But you also have 2 of the top the top 2 team or 2 of the top 3 teams in CFP odds on your schedule. Which
makes it interesting for sure.
It does make it interesting. One word to describe the 2024 Tennessee football season would be what for you, Joe?
I don't know. Maybe like stable. Like I think that it kind of brings you. It almost, or maybe like humbling. Like it kind of made you at the end of the season realize that. I think humbling is probably a better word because you have a playoff appearance, which coming into the 12-team playoff, that was really your goal, is to just get in the playoffs and let your team handle it from there. Obviously, you face a juggernaut, no issue, that like whatever, right? But it kind of puts you back in a place where it's like, are we really going to be this upset about a playoff appearance season? Like,
yes,
and it kind of and I understand why, because we're just it's always, even though it's on paper it sounds good, it was like in the most miserable way that just sucked the life out of you. But like you sit there like 2 weeks later and you're like, okay, but we've been way worse in the last 5 years, let alone 10, 20 years. So I think humbling, just in a sense of like, it does give even the lesser optimistic fans a good idea of the floor and at least what you can expect as a baseline every year to kind of at least look at 2025, especially with a lot of questions up in the air.
Yeah, I like humbling, and I think it probably helped that Oregon got blitzed worse than you did in the Rose Bowl not long after. So it's like the number 1 overall team was undefeated. The team that you lost to, I mean, they're on a collision course to win it all. So I think, I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I think it makes it feel, if you're Vol fan, like just still a little bit down about it, it's like, hey, you lost to maybe the eventual champion here, who is just on a unbelievable heater, beating 2 SEC teams, the best Big Ten team, and then we'll see the best independent team maybe, and best defense right now in defense in FEI on defense in Notre Dame.
And I mean, I guess in the end of the day, you're right. Like if you're going to lose to anybody, let it be the last team standing. But it's also one, like, I would have been fine either beating that team, said team, and losing the next round. Like that's one more game you get, or just not playing that team until the final, like one or the other. Not that I think we would have made it in another
curious.
Side.
You say that. I'm curious because Penn State fans, I'm curious what they think about this. And that's like if Tennessee had drawn Penn State's draw and you get SMU first, then Boise, then Notre Dame. Like, do you feel better if you're a Penn State fan than you do a Vol fan who lost and got blitzed in the first game? Because Penn State didn't beat anybody good. The narrative hasn't changed for James Franklin after that loss. Like, it feels pretty empty, right? Even with 2 playoff wins, you're like, yeah, but who did you ultimately beat? Like, you weren't clearly weren't winning a national championship based on how you played against Notre Dame at the end and seeing what Drew Aller looked like in the biggest stage. And I mean, just what that passing game was. I don't know. Like, do you feel
I
that
think
much
it would
more
have been
fulfilled?
a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know about more fulfilled. because I think the worst part about being a fan, and I think if you've played competitive sports and you've been, obviously the level college football is at now and is very different than just playing high school, soccer, football, basketball. If you play competitive, when you're in that environment, I think it's easier to step back and say, oh, wow, I accomplished all of this season, than as a fan where you don't really, the only accomplishment you really fill in on is a national championship, is a title. Like, that's the only one you really, in my opinion, is that's the only one you feel a part of. So it's harder to step back and go, like, I guess the conversation in like 2022 baseball, I was able to step back and be like, that was a heck of a season. I just don't think that team was ready for whatever reason. Like, I think it's hard to pinpoint in a sport like baseball, but that team just wasn't ready for whatever reason. Before, we didn't know we were going to win 2 years later. I mean, I think I would have felt better, though, if they had gone to Omaha, even if they get bounced in the first 2 games. Or maybe they beat the worst team in Omaha. But, like, I don't know. Both lost to Notre Dame. I don't know. You're not wrong in that, like, nothing's changed, but I think the same thing could be said for Sark. And I mean, their road wasn't as easy as SMU's, but it wasn't necessarily hard. So I don't know if that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think people might be more out on Sark now because he wouldn't pull the trigger to go with Arch.
I mean, that's tough. I don't know, man. He's built such a big foundation that their roster and just where they're at. And I mean, they're the preseason favorite again next year. Like, I don't know. I think next year's probably a big year with Arch and company, and I think he needs to bounce back. But he's made the Final Four in the last 2 years, so I don't know. I mean, you got to eventually get over the hump, but
right.
I wouldn't bet against Sark in Texas right now. Would you be surprised if Sark won a title in the next 3 years?
Very surprised.
Interesting.
And the way he coaches right now, very surprised.
Okay.
Did they score on a single opening drive this playoff? When's the last time they've scored on an opening drive? Because all I've heard the last 3 weeks is he's the best at scripted plays. I know they didn't do it against Arizona State or Ohio State. I haven't gone back and looked at Clemson yet.
It's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head. Were you about to say something, Joe?
I was just going to ask Kayla because I know that we were like going back to the Ohio State thing. Would you have rather had Ohio State lost to Oregon and be done sheerly out of like the hate of, because I know that just seems like
I
such a
hate
big
Ohio
thing.
State. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I look, if anybody hates the Big Ten, it's me. Like Penn State, trust me, like I've been on this way for a while. But like to Chase's point, it doesn't change that you lost. It helps. I mean, again, if we're just at least trying to spin a narrative and like have some positive,
it's easier to spin that narrative for sure. You're not wrong.
I mean, I just feel better knowing that like Oregon was the number 1 team for most of the year, where it was like no question about it, no one doubted them. Ohio State come and tranches us. Everyone's like, oh, maybe Tennessee wasn't as good. They go tranche Oregon. Not as many people are like, oh, so Oregon just wasn't as good either. It's like, no, Ohio State just makes them look so much better. So, I mean, at least as much as it pains me, and now that they're in the championship, I don't really care.
If we played that game, even if it was a shootout, if we played that game to like 2 scores, I would probably be in the boat of like, cool, let's see them roll. Like getting bounced the way we got bounced, I think everyone's just like, you didn't deserve to be there. And it's kind of hard to argue because the team 3 weeks prior, got embarrassed on the national stage by Michigan. I mean, flat out embarrassed. And it looks like that was the catalyst to this run. It's one of those that, like, at the end of the day, yeah, I guess the team that bounced you, like, you'd rather them win it all. But it also doesn't necessarily entirely make me feel better. You're right. It's easier to spin that narrative. But I don't know. I'm just like, I'd rather just not lose. It's one of those things. Like, it's hard to, like, pick an alternative because I would rather just win. And if I have rooting interest right now, it's Notre Dame because I want the national champion to have lost to NIU in the same season. So bad. And I don't think there's any way they beat Ohio State.
Hey, the national champion in baseball this year lost a game to Evansville in the tournament. Still won it all.
It wasn't the tournament, though, to be fair.
I'm just saying it happened. Like we were sweating Evansville. Like that was, I remember it. It was Evansville fans were in Knoxville, very confident. What'd you say, Joe?
They traveled.
They traveled, man.
They were chirping Blake Burke's dad in game 2.
I mean, they were cocky. Like we could just say that. Like they were a confident bunch. Like I kind of respected it. This small school out of nowhere just coming into Knoxville.
For
and
sure.
Hornets Nest and to carry themselves that way, it was wild. Like my wife and I I remember we were in Market Square and they're like leading chants, like chirping at Tennessee fans walking by, and I'm like, it's like 9:00 in the morning. This game's not like, what are we doing?
No, they came to play. That's in the tournament.
Yeah,
so it's different. And
I just think it's funny that forever. Like they won a national championship the same season we were sweating if they were going to make it out of Supers against Evansville. Yeah, like it's crazy. Sports is crazy. That's why we watch it. We don't know. But Caleb, what's your one word, by the way?
See, I was gonna go. Was it Charles Barkley that was like, I got 5 words for you and listed off 7? I think it's hard to pinpoint this season into one word. It was exciting, like a ton of exciting moments. It was excruciatingly frustrating. It was just maddening at times. It was fun. It was boring at times. Like that Mississippi State game was a brutal watch. There were some exciting moments in that Mississippi State game, but 60 minutes of football was just not fun.
Yeah.
The Alabama game was it was a great football game. There were some ugly moments, but there were some highlight moments. Nico, ball. Like there was a lot of this season that was positive, and there was a lot of the season that was really, really not good either. I don't want to use the word negative necessarily. I think the only negative I could truly point out is really Arkansas. Like that was a step back. Other than that, like I don't know if this team took a step back. Was the Ohio State game a slam on your brakes, you're about to run into a brick wall moment? Yeah. But I don't know if it was a step back. I
think Georgia was kind of a step back in a way where it kind of like gave me a lot more pause about Ohio State with how Tennessee handled Georgia. And the front 7 just not getting home at all.
I think for Tim Banks it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind
of play calling in that game was a step back.
Also, just guys not getting home, like Pierce and company, they just couldn't get home.
But it's hard to get home when you're only willing to send 4 guys. Like they don't have to worry about anything else except him. It's pretty easy to block. I could get in his way if I only had his responsibility. Could I block him? No, that's not what I'm saying, people. But I can get in his way.
Yeah.
Are you saying?
Yeah,
Oklahoma drill. You can take him.
Yeah, I got him.
I'll pay to see it.
Here's a fun fact. My freshman year of high school, I played scout team defense, and I would line up at defensive end very often just for fun. I was not an easy block. I was physical. I had a lot of bend about me, and I think just oftentimes the tackle would line up and be like, I don't have to do anything this play.
Yeah.
I was able to knock guys back too because they weren't expecting it.
You're just like Stetson Bennett of
low
South
pad
Doyle
level,
High School on the edge.
Yeah, that's right. Low pad level, and you can't beat it.
Goodness gracious. I love it.
James Pierce, we won't line up 1v1, but maybe line up across from each other. Who gets home first? Let's find out.
Who needs to take the biggest step on offense next year, Joe? And who needs to take the biggest step on defense next year?
Okay, on offense, I don't know that.
Can I chime in real quick because I have a question about this and it might help Joe? Are you looking for a singular name?
Singular name.
Position group? Okay.
Singular name, yeah.
I think Mike Matt maybe not step up and like on them, like they need to do it. Like it's kind of like their job because I think Mike Matthews has established that he's a talented player. But I think he kind of needs to 4-man that wide receiver group in terms of skill and let I don't know what side it is in terms of coaching and letting him get that action, but I think he kind of needs to like cement himself as that guy. And like, if he is that talented, prove it and like give him a reason to have the coaches consistently have him in. Because obviously that was a dilemma this year, obviously, and the wide receivers as a whole really just never got too much going. Especially in that Ohio State game. So many people praised Nico after that game because he just tooth and nail every time was trying to extend the play as much as he could. And it just didn't seem he had a lot of help. Now, again, whether that was skill or whether it was, play calling, but I think Mike Matthews on that side of the ball needs to probably just be that shoe in for wide receiver. That's just your guy. Like that's your 5-star. That's your man. Man, on the defensive side, I would love to see Bucar be Travis. Like I would love to see him be able to play both sides of the ball and just be a demon. Like the way he's able to spread across the field on defense for his size is impeccable. I would love to see him just become like that I mean, we can say whatever about two-sided, but definitely on the defensive side, um, I would love to see him, step up as the main guy. Arian Carter's back again, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he
Okay.
is.
And
I think.
those are my two. In terms of consistent on defense, I've been Arian Carter homer all season. Caleb, you know that we've been talking about that all year about someone I thought was kind of undervalued. I would like to maybe just see him get more praise. Again, that's not even him really stepping up at all. I think he's doing a great job. It's just a matter of maybe people recognizing that, or at least establishing that for everybody else to see.
And he could have really benefited from Peely being healthy the last 2 years, where a lot more
Yeah.
pressure was taken off Carter, because I think Arian's been thrown to the wolves a little bit, especially this past year. And I think there's a lot of reason for optimism with Arian, and I also think Spillman is going to help a lot. Like going into this offseason, if you had you can tell Inge loves Spillman, and he was playing a lot early as a true freshman, and right when he's back in, even with the club arm or whatever, he's still playing. He's still getting snaps, and he's I don't know. Spillman's a dude. I'm just I've sold no stock on Spillman Island. It's nothing's up for sale. Spillman, I think, is going to be the next great Tennessee Mike linebacker, and T-Lander obviously Inge likes a lot. I think that 3-man rotation is going to get a lot of play, and Christian Gass, I think, is going to be an interesting Swiss Army knife at linebacker, and coming off the edge out of East Side back in my home state of Georgia. But I like that one. And Boo, I think the secondary could be better behind Boo if he's playing both ways. Maybe you give him some more rest on the defensive side of the ball so he can play both ways, because you have Jordan Thomas back. And Jordan Thomas was slated to start at star last year. Maybe you're able to rotate a little bit more and conserve Boo a little bit. So I like those. And then obviously Mike Matthews. There's no question. Mike Matthews has to be a star this year. For Tennessee to get to where they want to go, you fought to keep him. He's your biggest returning guy. He's your first 5-star receiver you've added. There's obviously a big investment there. Mike Matthews has to be huge. There's no excuses now. Yeah. It's not. There's no question if Mike Matthews is going to start and get a lot of snaps. Mike Matthews is going to play a lot of snaps for Tennessee next year. And I think for Tennessee and Nico to get where they want to be, Mike's got to. He can be, to your point, Joe. He has all the talent to be that. But this year is there's no way around it. This is a young group. He has to play and he has to deliver.
Yeah.
What about you, Caleb?
Offense side of the ball, Mike Matthews is an obvious one that stands out. He's probably going to be your most targeted receiver more than likely. That's probably your thought process going into the season. I think it's got to be who replaces Dylan Sampson. I feel like we see what we're going to get out of Deshaun Bishop, so I'm going to go Peyton Lewis. It's hard to pinpoint anyone on the offensive line, a singular one, or I'd probably try to do that. But I think it's Peyton Lewis. He's got to be. They're going to go back to probably more of a 2-back look rather than relying on a single person like they did Dylan Sampson. What does Peyton Lewis bring to the table in a full season? I think he's a big one. Relief from some of those receivers maybe allows them to get more open. We'll find out, but I think that running game is going to be crucial. Defensive side of the ball, I think it's the linebacking group. They've got to get better in pass coverage. And then I think I would go Arian Carter, because he's also got to take, not that I don't think he was a great leader in the absence of Keenan Peely, but I think he also has to take a step forward as the leader of the defense. And I think that's probably more where I would say he needs to step up rather than just in play. Pass coverage is incredibly important. But I think that's more so where I lean in the step up department for him.
I'm going to throw this out. You threw the tackles. I think it's Lance Hurd. Nothing works next year if Lance Hurd does not get back, because you're going to start a true freshman right tackle at David Sanders, and Lance Hurd was not good this year. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons as to what was going on there, but some of it was out of his hands, banged up, that kind of thing, but he was not good, and he's your left tackle, and he's a big investment. He's a former 5-star. You have 2 former 5-stars now at your most important position on the offensive line in the trenches, and you're going to be going up against some feisty teams here with Georgia, Bama, Florida, Oklahoma. They've got all good front sevens. I mean, Syracuse with Fran Brown and company, they're going to get after you. I mean, nothing works if Nico is running for his life another season. And Lance Hurd's got to be good.
Mike Matthew, we got to have the football.
Yes. Mike can get open, but if the offensive line's not protecting enough for Nico to get to Mike, then none of it matters. Lance Hurd's got to be really good next year.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Final one here. Your current feeling on Darlinstone Dubar mania, Caleb?
Need it. Desperately need it.
I'm here for it, right? Like,
this team
it's great.
this team is thin. I mean, we are one injury away from looking for the most athletic golden retriever in Knoxville to play. In fact, that may
Tyler
already
Ivins, you got to call him. He's got a golden retriever. See if he can play.
Yeah, Hooper. I mean, Rick Barnes may already be out at Young Williams scouting. Like,
there you
for
go.
all I know. Yeah, I mean, we're thin.
Joe, your boots on the ground. Is there anybody ready to go? Is anybody ready to hop in at a moment's notice?
I might be. I don't know.
Oh.
I'm just saying. I read
He was Joey Cleats for a moment. We thought he might have to play football, so he was Joey Cleats.
Yeah. I know a couple of intramural guys that are right there if they need them.
It's time. Bring him in. Does Drew Pember have any more eligibility?
He might have.
Surely. Is he still at UNC Asheville?
I think he moved on, man. That dude was a bucket.
It's like 8 years of college career. His hair's all long.
I don't know, man. Pember, man. I'll never understand it. He could have been really good here. Could have been a great stretch five. He shoots threes immediately going to Asheville. Never saw it at Tennessee, and now he's just like lighting up 40 and 10 over there at Asheville. Made the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, we had too many dudes when he was here.
Yeah,
it was the timing issue for him.
Yeah, they could use him this year though. Yeah, it's just kind of one of those you never know. Yeah. BJ Edwards filling it up. I think at SMU. So another former Vol seems to be working out. But yeah, I mean Dubar. I will pose this to y'all. I was talking to the Tennessee Ball Sports guys about this last night. I think you experiment with him starting tomorrow night over Meshack because where you're at with Meshack offensively and how opposing teams are guarding Jahmai. Like, I love Jahmai. He's a leader. He's been with this program for a really long time, but he hasn't shot a three in his last 2 games. Teams are just not even coming out on Jahmai. You already have 2 non-shooters around him, and Felix Akpara, who's just right at the rim. He's a running 5. Felix had a great week. Felix has least their problems. But if Igor's going to take 1 3 a game right now, which is what he did against Texas on Saturday, it's like Igor can shoot it, but if he's not going to be a willing shooter and he's going to dribble out of some open threes, Jahmai's not even looking at any threes or any driving kicks for that one moment where he passed up that layup and goes up and under where it's just right there and he ended up missing. It's like, what are we doing down there that like, it can't all be Chaz in the starting lineup, and you're getting off to these slow starts, and the SEC is the best basketball conference in the country this year. That like, I think you ride this Dubar confidence high. Like that, Dubar had like he's going to shoot it. He shot 40% the last 2 years at Hofstra. I think if you're going to be a 3-point dependent offense like Barnes and this team is this year, I think you need to have multiple high usage shooters on the floor at all times because the guy is now the ultimate drive and kick guy. Like he will find Dubar, and the confidence is there. I mean, he's chirping at the crowd and everything. It's great. Like, I don't know. I think Dubar, I think you experiment with Dubar in the starting lineup this week.
I wouldn't hate it. I don't know if it's too early necessarily. I also don't want to get into a situation where it's too late. I feel like Barnes honored the veteranship and legacy of a guy like Yves Pons for too long. And then we got to tournament time and it was like, all right, now we can't start him. And you never really found another guy that was going to cement himself there as a starter. So I wouldn't hate experiment with it too early, but I don't know if it's the fix. He's not been necessarily inconsistent because he hasn't necessarily gotten started, but I think that implies he's also not been consistent, like in minutes at all, let alone production in those few minutes. But yeah, I mean, I think we need him to keep playing well. So I don't hate trying to figure it out. Also, I mean, Georgia's a weird team. Who knows? Kentucky could suck. It could be really good. I don't know. It's just the SEC. Thankfully, it's a home game. So yeah, if you're gonna experiment, probably do it then.
What do you think, Joe?
I think skill wise, absolutely nail on the head. Like I think Caleb's right. Like this is your game to kind of do it. And I think especially like where Jahmai's at, I don't think it hurts you that much.
He's also injured. Speaking of where he apparently dislocated his thumb, I think.
Are you talking about Jahmai?
Yeah.
I thought it was one of his fingers. Where he
I think he dislocated his thumb.
Was it his thumb?
I thought that's what I had. Did they ever specify what finger it was?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then
But I
I
assumed it
heard
was one
someone
of his
talking
other
about his
fingers,
thumb.
but maybe not. I don't know.
Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you again, Joe. You just mentioned the Meshack thing. So
No, you're good. Just speaking of the personality side of it, especially like good amount of students are gonna be back in Knoxville for this game. It's kind of been like the milestone of like when you get back into town. I want to be there Wednesday for the game.
that's boots on the ground reporting. We know the students.
Yeah.
We know what the students are rumbling about.
There's a lot of factors here, but like it's very true that like especially in basketball, like the fans love to rally behind a personality, and so I think that like this is the perfect time in which like you saw with Urosh, like we can say whatever you want about like his talent level. Like if you needed to pick the arena up, or especially in tournament play, like just get even the team fired up, let alone the fans. Like there's got to be that one guy that the fans just love to cheer for, and you can't tell me Wednesday night if Dubar's open on the wing and like you just see a guy shoot out, it's going to be the most like people just now want him to make those shots. People want him to play well. So I think like feeding off that personality aspect is a major factor in terms of momentum and energy and morale for the team. So I do think you have a good opportunity there to take advantage of
that. I would like to say I agree with your point about the fan favorites. I would like to, and I'm not saying I speak for all of Vol Nation. Anytime Urosh came into the game, I immediately was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like we're just gonna see three of the most dumbest aggressive fouls. Well, it's not a bad example because Chase, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter last March. There were people that watched Tennessee basketball last year. They watched the Dalton Connect show.
Yeah.
And they would say with a straight face, imagine what this team could be if they just had a guy like Urosh on it.
I always say that.
He's crazy to me. Like, did you watch Urosh
the enforcer?
Play?
Like
he wasn't even great he wasn't even a great enforcer.
Yeah, wow. All kinds of Urosh slander here.
Caleb hates
He wasn't.
He was fine. He was great. He served his role.
He was fine. You're right. Barely.
I don't know.
But I mean, part of the enforcer is you got to be able to.
Like, the opportunity.
It's not hockey. You don't get to go sit for a few minutes and come back in and all is forgotten. If you have 3 fouls, your job as an enforcer is negated. Like we can't have you on the court. You have to be a bully without just whacking at people or form tackling him and getting us labeled as a rugby school, which was awesome. I'll give him that. Him getting Jay Billis to cry for 6 months straight was all time. Love that. Appreciate that. That was great.
He's
but beyond that.
I mean, he was the reason that Tennessee got the name, like the notoriety where it's like ugly basketball and everything else. It was just like, that's just Euros, man. But he knew he served his role. I don't care. I don't care about the Euro slander.
When you're
he was great.
7 foot 260.
Yeah.
You don't have to form tackle someone to hit them hard. You can play basketball.
No, his screens were elite.
Those are fine. It's when he would not even, shove people to the ground. I'm like, you realize if you shoulder bump someone, they're going to the third row. Like you don't have to be egregious about this offense.
I'm going to a coma if I run into a Euro screen.
Yeah,
it's done.
And he would still play so dirty. Like, you don't have to do it, dog. Just hit people within the laws of the game. You're fine.
I can't believe we're ending a Dubar conversation and wrapping up this pod with
I can't. If we get to March again and they're like, imagine if we had Urosh, he probably would be good on this team because he would be another scholarship player. So that would be nice.
That's how I feel about Pember. And Ryan always gives me grief because like Pember's I'm like, man, if you just had 10 minutes of Pember in this offense when we get these cold spells, 5-out basketball. If you just had Pember here for a little bit, that's how I am. Who's the other one here locally that people wanted back or they've been keeping up with? Quinn Glover? Was that it? The other Bearden kid? Is that his name?
Not Quentin.
Quez Glover?
Quez, that sounds right. Quez Glover.
Yeah. I feel like those are the two. But yeah, any local guys.
Was he at Georgia first? I know Blue Cain from Catholic ended up at Georgia.
Blue Cain's an awesome name.
He's a hooper.
He's a hooper.
He's clean.
I mean, he'll be here on Wednesday.
I was like, honestly, I don't even know if he's still at Georgia. But
he's
good enough.
Junior, right?
He is still there, yeah. Yeah, he's still there.
You just can't ever know with the transfer portal. I know he's young, but
that's true.
That guy could have played at 3 different schools by now.
That's true. Caleb, Joe, what can the good folks check out from y'all over at More Important Issues this week? Yeah,
Thursday we'll be back to our regular scheduled programming. We'll be doing a live show 8 to 10, 8 to 10-ish. Then we've got back on, I guess just this week's we're just back on track. You can always find us on YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff. And then, of course, on Fan Run Radio at Fox Sports Knox. We appreciate everybody following along, and we're excited to be back here on the Chase Thomas podcast for first one of 2025. You were with us last week, so good to be back this year.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you for stepping in for Landon this week. It's always awesome to have you on the program as well. Enjoy it. I'm assuming you're going to the game tomorrow night. You're back. You'll be in the building.
I'll be fine. Don't worry
Boots
about
on the ground. What am I saying? Boots on the ground, obviously. Joe
Keep 'em
Niblick,
up.
Caleb Mitchell, thank you guys as always, and I'll talk to y'all very soon.
Thanks.
All right, hello. Welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast, taping this on a Tuesday morning. We've got Locked On Vols, Volquest own Eric Cain is here. Eric, good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here, sir. This is look, we have some baseball stuff that we're going to get to here because baseball season, as we talked about before we got started, is coming up very quickly. We'll be sitting out at Lindsey Nelson Stadium in the cold here sooner rather than later for a game that we know Tennessee's going to win, but we are going to watch intently and freeze our tails off because that is the start of college baseball season. It's like, who amongst us is ready to spend 2.5 hours for Georgia State, Tennessee? Only a few of us, and Eric Cain and myself are one of the few in the proud.
Yeah, there's going to be a ton of people that'll pack the stadium. Of course, I mean it's just amazing. I've only covered the team for 3 or 4 years total altogether, and every day on the beat for the last 2 seasons, and just seeing like being around the stadium and 18, 19, and these February, March non-conference games. And then now it's like, I mean, it's just packed house, sold house. Into February it's 47 degrees, 45 degrees, and there's sleet going, and I mean there's can't keep people away.
Absolutely. It's a good problem to have. Good problem to have. It'll be a weird year though with the construction and everything else. It's going to be an interesting type year, but it's going to be fun. The final product is going to be pretty good stuff.
I still have no clue where we're going to sit in terms of the press box. I seriously have no clue. Oh crap! I don't know. I was trying to share something on my screen here, but anyway, I can't do it. But it's that picture of the construction workers sitting on the steel in New York City. When yeah. That's how I think that me and Ben and Mike and Shump and everybody are going to be this year covering Tennessee baseball.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do, man. Let me just go ahead and tell you, I'll be on my couch, my laptop, my notepad. I watch it like Ryan Russillo. I watch Tennessee sporting events like I'm Russillo. But Eric Cain, we are going to talk some football here before we get into a couple of different baseball questions I want to pick your brain on. But with it being the 2025, I know y'all did some coverage on this over at Volquest.com. Make sure you go subscribe today if you're not already. But about like Wishlist for 2025 for Tennessee football. And one of the things I'm curious about from your vantage point is if you could have one wish granted for the 2025 Tennessee football team, what would it be?
One wish granted. Couple different things I'd like to see happen.
You got to pick one though. It's got to be one wish.
If I could do one, and this is why, it would be beat Florida in the swamp towards the end of the season. Okay, because I think that game is going to be you win, you're in. You lose, you're out. I think Tennessee's going to be teetering right around that playoff brink. Georgia early in the season obviously is going to be such a tough battle. Alabama on the road. Tennessee, of course, we know the road woes. But Tennessee hasn't won in the swamp since 2003. It's been forever. And every time Tennessee goes down there, it's like a house of horrors. And because it is on the brink of the end of the season right there in front of Vanderbilt, I think that's going to be a play-in game for Tennessee. Of course, you got to beat Vanderbilt. But beating Florida on the road, kind of snapping that streak, winning a big-time road game and a game that I think can punch your ticket to the playoffs potentially, that'd be mine.
I like that. And I mean, I think it's one of those things you just jot down now of like, hey, I think this might end up being something that matters at the end of the year is flipping when we play Georgia and Florida. Because, I mean, you mentioned last time you won in Gainesville is 2003, but that year when 9/11 happened, that was 2001. That was the first time you won there in a while, and that was with Casey Clausen in December. December 1st, I think, was when that game was played. So, I mean, the early season trips to Gainesville have not gone well. So maybe Florida because I think part of it is like Florida's seasons hadn't torpedoed at that point, and there's a lot more optimism in Gainesville early in the year when you're playing in the Swamp. But
here's the thing: take 2024 season, right? You wanted to play Florida when you played them, because if you played them in November, that'd be tough, right?
Maybe, I don't know. Lagway was kind of up and down. I still like Lagway, but a true freshman. It's as long as Tennessee, the bar is just so high in Knoxville. I would agree with you if it was in Gainesville, but I mean, he's lost one home game in the last 3 years. So until Heupel drops one of these, because like I've circled Oklahoma this year as the one that, like, if there was going to be an upset for Tennessee at home in 2025 for the first time in a while, it'd probably be John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, and what Oklahoma has done remaking that offensive side of the ball. Like, I think John Mateer is a really good quarterback, and we've seen how running true dual threat quarterbacks have given Tennessee problems. So I think that's a possibility I've circled, but until Heupel and Tennessee drop a game they shouldn't in Neyland, I'm just not going to go there. But in terms of Florida for Tennessee, it's a big one. Like, if you get over that middle hump, because these three are the final 3 middle humps for Heupel at Tennessee, right? It's not just like you've beaten Florida and Alabama both times at home, but at Gainesville, like, it's been, I mean, worse than at Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa, you've been in every game. Like, you should have beaten Bama in Tuscaloosa with Saban in 23. If you convert one of those red zone field goals into a touchdown, you're up 3 scores instead of what you were, where Alabama has one big play to start the second half and they're right back in it back within a touchdown. You're like, man, we really, really did not finish as strong as we should have in that first half to give them no hope. Because if they go in 3 scores down, I just don't think Alabama comes out with that same kind of fire. Like, we're one play away from getting right back in this. So I don't know. They played in Tuscaloosa really well. That's a winnable game to me. I don't know if you feel the same.
No, and like, I mean, no disrespect, but I mean, going on the road to Florida and going on the road to Alabama are 2 completely different things. Like, it's not like the atmosphere is bad at Tuscaloosa, but it is not the Swamp. It is not between the hedges. There have been louder environments outside of the big 3, or the other 2 of the big 3 than Alabama. Like, again, it's not easy. Clearly, Tennessee's not won there in a while, but it's doable. And I completely agree. That 2023 season, you convert, one more touchdown outside of the field goal. If you just show up and have a pulse in the second half, I mean, how easy is it to win that football game? You were right there, and I mean, what a start in that football game. I think winning big games on the road obviously is one of those things that he's got to overcome. Beating Georgia, just in general, right? I mean, we can worry about beating Georgia down there at some point, but just beating Georgia. Georgia's the only one that he's not had any success against. He's had success, as you mentioned, against Alabama twice, Florida twice. Some of these other big games, throughout the course of the SEC schedule the last couple of years, but Georgia's not been one of those. So you've got to win a big road game. If you're going to win the conference, if you're going to, be a national championship caliber team, you've got to win on the road. And Tennessee's, I mean, I did the math the other day. I got it written down somewhere. I think it's like 8-11. Don't quote me. I think it's like 8-11 true road games for Heupel since he's been here. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. So for as dominant as you are at home, and that's important. That's very important. If you want to be a championship team, you got to win those on the road. And I think this year coming out specifically with on the road at Florida, on the road at Alabama, are much more important games, in my opinion, than week 3 again, or week whatever it is against Georgia at home. Huge game. If you drop that game against the Bulldogs, boy, you have time to make up for it, right? It's like nobody cares about Notre Dame's loss in Northern Illinois or, whatever, way back when. They're playing for a national title now. So that's why I think it's so important.
I think if I'd rank them in terms of most likely for Tennessee, I'd probably go 1 at Alabama, 2 Georgia at home, 3 at Florida.
In terms of wins?
Yeah, in terms of wins.
I agree with Alabama. I said that in the Monday Night Chat, I think, the other night. I agree with Alabama. Yeah, Georgia's roster is still just so good. I understand what they're losing and kind of where they are. I'll do a more deep dive into, their roster after the transfer portal additions and all that. But I still think that roster is really, really good. I just think the Florida on the road is so tough. And I'm with you. I mean, Lagway, had a lot of highs when he came in this year, and I think he's going to be such a good player. I do think that he's a bit overranked. I mean, I've already seen some quarterback rankings, and we did that on my show the other day. 2025 quarterback rankings, SEC. Like, some of these lists, I see him at number 2 already. Like, okay, let's slow the roll a little bit. Like, top 5, sure, I agree. Nussmeier's number 1 at LSU. I mean, there's some other good ones that are coming back, but Now, Lagway was still up and down as a true freshman last year, but I think he's going to be really, really good. Having said all that, what they bring back in the backfield, they're still going to have the wide receiver who's really, really good, Trey. I'm forgetting his last name.
Wilson.
Yeah, Trey Wilson the third, Eugene Wilson the third. I need to find out what they are on the line of scrimmage. I don't know Florida like I know Tennessee, but on the road in November, I think that's going to be a challenge. So I kind of agree with that. Maybe flip-flop Florida and Georgia, but I have no issues with Alabama, Georgia, Florida in that order.
You've been competitive against Florida, at least at home. You haven't been competitive against Georgia in the second half. Like, you've been shut out the last 2 times. Like, it's the thing with me with Georgia is, and probably what scares me the most about getting over that final Georgia hurdle is when you go into next year with a youth movement, there's just no way around there not being a youth movement at receiver for Tennessee. These are young guys, and you know how Georgia defends, and their corners, they're physical. They just dominate Tennessee receivers. They just have dominated them the last 4 years. And unless we see a huge flip, and it's possible, like you have a bunch of blue chippers now who are going to get the opportunity to make a name for themselves, highlighted by Mike Matthews, and we'll see with Braylon Staley and guys. But like, until we see consistent separation from Tennessee wideouts in Georgia games, Tennessee can't win when they don't have chunk plays with the wide receiver position. If you look at the Georgia game, I think Miles Kitselman led Tennessee in receiving that game last year. If Miles Kitselman leads Tennessee in receiving any game this year, Tennessee lost that game. Like, that's just, it's not an indictment on Miles, because Miles is doing what he can. He's solid. But that's just, this offense doesn't work that way. Like, this offense does not thrive. And I mean, you're 94th in passing in SEC play this year. Like, the passing game was in a SEC play, an abject disaster. And until that changes and they show it, and it's going to be early, so they're going to have that opportunity, and being at home will help. I just think the Georgia thing is just really, really, I got to see it to believe it, because the receiver position has to win in a way against these Georgia corners. And they bring back Dalen Everett, who's a really good player, could have gone to the NFL. He'll be on one side, and then you have the number 1 overall corner from that class, and Ellis Robinson on the other side, who's in year 2 of the program. Like, all right, we'll see. We'll see if they can win one-on-one when they do press man against these young Tennessee wideouts. But until Tennessee wins in space like that and frees things up for chunk plays on the outside, like, I don't think they can beat Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like, it's one of those you got to believe it to see it type situations. And you're exactly right. The physicality on the perimeter. I mean, back in 2022, Tennessee was obviously good that year and obviously super competitive and all that. But it's like, you got to Georgia, and I'm not saying this was the mindset, but it was kind of like, oh boy, look, we're here playing this big game. Everybody in the country is watching us right now. We have not arrived, but we're back essentially and playing in these types of games. And then you get blitzed. And I mean, those corners just absolutely demolished Tennessee's wide receivers. And it was the same a little bit this year. And another thing, outside the perimeter play, and I think Tim Banks did a fantastic job this year. And I think he's going to be Tennessee's defensive coordinator next year. I think they're going to get that done here in the next week or so, in my opinion, or before the end of the contract running out. But I think he was fantastic this year. I think he had a really, really bad game, against Georgia. I think 2023 at Florida, I think he had a really bad game plan. You saw Mike Bobo scheme up some stuff to get one-on-one on another guy that was fantastic this year for Tennessee, and Will Brooks. But Will Brooks has limitations. Mike Bobo schemed up to get to Will Brooks, and they just ate. And what's your in-game adjustment, right? I mean, I'm not a football coach. I like to think I know football. I played football and all that. But, I mean, who doesn't think they know football, right? I'm not a coach. What's your in-game adjustment? Why are you not mixing some things up? According to Pro Football Focus, Tennessee blitzed 39% of the time against Georgia. Did not feel that way in real time or when a rewatch. Against Ohio State, I think it was 31 dropbacks Tennessee blitzed. Gosh, I want to say 7 times. I mean, that is not good enough. Like, in-game adjustments, you've got to switch some things up in those big-time games, or those coordinators, Chip Kelly, Mike Bobo, are just going to continue to scheme it up. And that's what was disappointing for me in those big games this year. You got some talent. Ohio State, you never showed up. But Georgia, I mean, you had a great first quarter, right? I mean, you had a great start. Just like Alabama 2023, you had a great start. You got to sustain it. And that's what separates the good teams from, the great teams and the championship-winning teams. So, that's something as well. And the perimeter, go back to that conversation, like, where's Bradsell next year, man? Like, he was he was a bit of a disappointment this year. But as we've seen, second year in the system, sometimes that helps. Dante Thornton if he could have stayed healthy, he would have been a 1,000-yard receiver this year. He was much, much better. Hopefully Bradsell takes that step. Mike Matthews has got to take off. Travis Smith, where's Amari Jefferson, some of these younger guys. You've got to be physical on the outside because Cedric Tillman's not here on one side. Brew McCoy's gone on the other. Jalen Hyatt, nobody has his speed in the slot where you can literally just run by anybody that's trying to guard you, even if they're in press. You don't have that. So you got to figure it out, right? And Tennessee's got to take that step for sure.
But that's what makes it fun. It's like, I don't have a definitive answer here. I have some thoughts on which way it's going to go. But like, I do think the most exciting part about the offense is that you and I can have our theories and our expectations and assumptions, but it's the most uncertain it's ever been in the Heupel era. I mean, at running back, on the offensive line, at receiver, at quarterback.
I'll say this, though. This. You're right. I agree. It's the most uncertain in terms of, kind of where are you and who are you, right? It's like you have an identity, but boy, you haven't been hitting on that identity really in like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this about the run game. You're missing Dylan Sampson. He's an NFL guy, great guy. Tennessee's rushed for 2,500 yards or more in 4 straight years with Heupel. That's never been done in Tennessee history. Yeah. Tennessee ran for the second most yards last year in modern history, most since 1951. Dylan Sampson's great, and I'm not taking it away. Tennessee can run the football, I think, with whoever.
Well, when you have it's the light boxes and the wide splits. Like, they're always going to have like that success. I just meant more in terms of like Sean Bishop has not been able to stay healthy for the last 2 years, and he's going to be one of your 2 important guys. And Peyton Lewis obviously was banged up coming to Tennessee. It can just get very dicey in a hurry in terms of bodies. Like, that's my main thing. It's like anyone who's like worried about Nico and his jump, I'm like, Nico's going to have to, because Nico's going to have to run a lot more than he did this past year, and he's ran a lot down the stretch. But it's also like, it's going to have to be more passing. It's going to have to be closer to, like, we're putting the ball more in Nico's hands to make plays downfield and throw guys open and do other stuff. Like, there has to be more on his plate, because the safety valve and the consistency of Dylan Sampson, especially in the second half, is just not there. And these guys, like, I like Peyton Lewis. I like Deshaun Bishop. I like DeJuan Morris coming in. But, I mean, you're thin there. You are you were the most thin you've been at that position, I guess, since 2021.
2021, you had a walk-on running back playing snaps against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that situation again. 2023, was it 23 when they tried to bring in the kid from that got kicked out?
Oh, yeah, Lynn J. Dixon.
Yes, and I believe, don't quote me, but I believe they had 4 scholarship running backs that season. And we're all sitting here like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It turned out to be okay. All right. But you don't want to be in that situation. That's why Tennessee, in my opinion, is trying to find a running back. And if they find a running back, he's going to be a guy that comes in and plays a little bit. Now, in this era that we're in, you're not going to go pay, you're not going to go pay $500,000 for a guy that's going to split carries. That's just not, that's not good business sense, right? So I understand the frustration with Tennessee being slow and not active as much as everybody wants to in the portal, but you're at a point where sure you want to add, evaluate. There's been some guys Tennessee wanted, no doubt, but chose not to come here, and then that's part of it. There's also been some guys Tennessee's passed on, and you've just got to be smart about this, because you are, with the resources you're using to retain your roster, and Tennessee did a pretty dang good job of that, retaining your roster. You had a lot of guys, you had like 10 guys into the portal that, Squirrel White was a productive player. I wish him well. I think he's replaceable. I do. Holden Stays, good player. Miles Kitzman, Ethan Davis, they're staying. So good luck. Holden Stays. The rest, I mean, they're rotational guys, and they can be, replaced is what I'm trying to say. And so you spend all those resources retaining your roster. It's not monopoly money, right? And so I think Tennessee's been selective. I think Tennessee's got to be selective, and you got to be smart in some of these decisions, to where, again, you're not going to pay $500,000 for a guy to come in and split carries. That just doesn't make sense. But anyway, I do think they're trying to find another running back. And if they do, I think it's going to be more of a work share, Lewis, Bishop, and maybe Morris or said running back from the portal that are going to kind of carry that load a little bit. Completely off topic. I'm sorry, but it kind of got me thinking about those in-game adjustments I was talking about on defense again a moment ago. Offensively, that's what this offense is. You said a moment ago, wide splits. At points and times this year, man, you couldn't protect Nico, and Nico is struggling, okay? And, like, I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, I understand what the offense is, but goodness, just scoot those splits down a little bit. Help your guy out. Not have him sit back there and wait for the dig to come open or wait for the post to come open. You scoot those slants in there, speed up the clock a little bit, help your quarterback. They're just so unwilling to make any of those adjustments. But in terms of the wide receiver splits, I think that's something that they probably never will, to your point.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, Eric. I think it is what it is at this point. But I'm very curious what new wrinkles Heupel does. Like,
how many times did Ohio State throw to the running backs this year? a crap ton.
I mean, Travion Henderson had like a 75-yard touchdown run or touchdown catch, like just that little wheel route out of the backfield. And
yeah, watch these wild card games this year. I mean, they throw to the running backs. So there's nothing wrong with the check down. There's not, and so many times that check down's just not even there. It's like, and they're staying in there to help block a little bit, and I get that. But man, you've got to have a check down. You've got to involve the backs in the backfield. Check down, wheel route, little arrow.
Feels
route.
like that was Kitzelman and Stays a little bit this year. Their check down is the tight end.
Yeah. And I think you need to be involved to get those guys more active in the passing game for sure.
Yeah. Final football thing for you. Who do you think right now, who's your guy that you think no one's really talking about going into 25, who you think will play a lot more snaps than people are anticipating?
Snaps. Like a linebacker, I think a bunch of those freshmen that they just signed are going to play. So I think we're kind of talking about that a little bit. We know that William Satterwhite's probably going to have to play, like he's a leader in the clubhouse at center. Spring, we'll see what happens. We know David Sanders is going to play. I'll go Edrees Farooq at safety. They like him a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know the situation and why he was in the football game on the goal line in Athens. I'm not sure why. He played like 4 snaps that game. That was one of them.
Yeah.
But point is, I mean, they put him in the football game, and he was kind of that next man up whenever Christian Charles went down with injury. Like a skill set, like the fact that he can pack a punch. I think he's good in space, just about getting reps and all that. And I think that with Will Brooks leaving and you bring back Thomas and Charles and Turrentine, you're going to need a fourth for that rotation. I think Farooq can be that guy. And I think that he's probably got the highest ceiling of that group. So I think Edrees Farooq is going to be a guy that's going to make a name for himself defensively for Tennessee in 2025.
I like that one. And I think him and Jacoby kind of have a mirroring skill set a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just 2 heavy hitters. Like there's 2 instances I can think off the top of my head for both of them. I mean, they come in flying. And I think if you rotate, because I think a lot of people are like, wait, I don't know why fans are kind of out on Christian Charles a little bit. I thought he played really well.
Here's the thing. Like everybody remembers Christian Charles as the corner back in 2022, and he's not a corner, and he was playing out of position. They were just trying to find athletes. They were just trying to make it work, right? He's not a corner. He's always been a safety. He came here as a safety. He played as a safety in 21, got hurt. Corner in 22, didn't play 23 essentially. I thought he played about 275 snaps this year. Finally ran. He was hurt all year long. He's always hurt. Played through it, couldn't play through it the last couple of games of the year. But I'm with you, man. I thought he played pretty well. I thought he flashed. I thought he showed up. And, I mean, Will Brooks is the best safety, and no fans wanted Will Brooks to play. He was absolutely the best safety this year, and it wasn't even close. I thought Christian Charles was pretty good, too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you have guys, and we'll see if John Slaughter factors in, too, a little bit next year. But I think you're getting more athletic in the back end there, and I think you're going to have options, and you're going to rotate more. Like, I just don't think it's, like, you saw that this past year. Like, they're rotating at safety now. Like, it's not like the Jalen McCullough era where it's just going to be a gargantuan amount of snaps for those 2 safeties. I don't think that's coming. And then Jordan Thomas, like, ultimately what he looks like coming back. Is he a safety? Does he split with Christian Harrison now gone? Does he, and if Boo plays more offensive snaps, do you give Jordan more snaps at star to keep him fresh? I think that's a possibility. So I don't know. I'm not really worried. I'm not worried anywhere on defense. Like nothing about the Tennessee defense is with this staff and everything else. Defensive line, it's going to be fine. Like Edge, Jordan Ross, Joshua Josephs, they're all going to be fine. Like I'm not worried about the interior of the defensive line. Like they're going to have body. Like David Hobbs is going to step in. Like the Jackson White. Like they're going to be fine. I'm not really worried about any of that. Linebackers, I think they're going to have a lot of talent. Like Spillman and Aaron Carter, I think could be better than what you had this past year with a full healthy offseason with Spillman and T. Lander. Like I think they're going to be fine at linebacker. Corner, obviously fine, and maybe even better. I'm not worried about it. It's all offense, and it's so weird with an offensive coach. All my questions are on offense. Tennessee's gonna have an elite defense again next year. I don't see any real concerns there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the defense. I'm so, as a football nerd and junkie like yourself, like I love seeing the secondary come together.
Yeah,
I love seeing the pieces they have back there. I love the fact that they're all so young at corner. I love the linebackers. I mean, they're young. They played a ton. They have some limitations, but you're right. Spillman, if he was healthy all year long, he would have played all year long.
Yes.
He would have played. Jaden Harmon, Christian Gass, depending on where they want to play Gass, I mean, those 2 guys are going to play as freshmen. We'll see if Jaden Perlotti gets in there as well. And then you're right. I mean, up front, Bryce Neeson's another guy in the interior that's going to come back, and obviously that's huge. Joshua Josephs, I think, can have a banner year. I think he's such a good player. And then on the other side, Dominic Bailey is going to come back as well. So, I mean, you're returning a lot of experience. He played a lot of guys up there. I'm with you. I think the defense is going to be fine. It's who's your center? Who are your guards? Can your
Is
true
Lance Hurd
freshman,
good? Is Lance Hurd good?
Yeah, it's Lance Hurd taking a step. Can your true freshman hit the ground running? And David Sanders. I mean, so many questions right there on the offensive line. Who steps up a wide receiver? And more than anything, does Nico take that step from year 1 to year 2? He's got to. He was far from bad last year. He was far from being the number 1 overall player in the country. We can all agree on that. He's got to take a step, and that's the biggest question overall for anything we're talking Tennessee football. It's all about Nico, all about the quarterback, and we'll just have to see kind of where he is in August.
Speaking of, we got to see where we're at. A little bit of a surprising news this week for Tennessee baseball, Eric. Alex Perry stepping away, and we wish him well. He was somebody who I was really excited about this offseason because I think he, obviously, as you know, he was in play for the shortstop position last year. He can rake. Like, he has good size, frame, and he just seemed like someone who was a natural star in waiting in a Vitello, Lindsey Nelson Stadium type feel. And he's not going to be on the team in 25 now. And I get you wrote about it this week over at Volquest about like Dalton Bargo being either that in the Monday Night Chat, I don't remember which one, but it was Dalton Bargo and then Levi Clark, who everybody is really excited about too. And he's obviously a highly ranked true freshman coming in here. But you have options, and I'm a big Bargo guy, and he was someone who you weren't really sure where he was going to end up, and it was kind of the same last year. It was just like, just play him, and I was someone who was like, I don't just let him DH every game. Like, let Bargo get comfortable DHing. I don't understand the DH rotation last year. Like, you won a title, so none of it mattered, but I would love to pick Tony's brain about what the DH, the never-ending DH rotation, because I'm like, I don't get it. But Bargo, I think, obviously is a good option at first base, but what do you make of Perry not being part of the team in 25 and where the Vols go at first base?
Yeah, like you said, wish him well for sure. Not going to be with the team. He's a guy that the teammates really enjoy being around. Tony Vitello loves him. You know, every coach has kind of got, loves them all. Players coach, probably never admit it, but like, every coach. Tony's no different. Tony's got some guys. Mm-hmm. Alex Perry was one of those guys. Even last year when he literally never played, he's banged up and everything. He's one of Tony's guys. And so Tony liked him a lot. And trying to find a place for him that made sense. Last year, everybody was looking for a shortstop in the 14 inning or 18 inning game against Virginia Tech and fall last year at Tuscan College. Alex Perry went off, had a really, really good game. And so kind of leaving fall, I was like, okay, well, Alex Perry, I think it's going to be in line to maybe at least start the season, maybe being an option at shortstop. And right before opening weekend, he got hurt. Dean Curley got hurt. And it was like everybody who was Antigua was already hurt. It was like everybody who was already an option is hurt. And so they had to slide Simo over there at short for a little bit. But, trying to find a spot for him. He's got a frame. He's a bigger guy. Okay. So he looks like a first baseman anyway. Blake Burke was gone, getting drafted in the first round by the Brewers. Tennessee's trying to find a first baseman. Dalton Bargo, probably the favorite in the clubhouse, before fall last summer, now probably always the favorite in the clubhouse, but he got banged up a little bit in fall. And so he was out of commission. So it really gave Alex Perry an opportunity to show like, hey, I can fill in here. Hey, I can play here. Hey, I can compete here. And he did really well. There were some growing pains along the way and all that, but I thought he did a pretty good job. Yeah. With the stick in his hands there at the plate, he's fine. Wish him well. Like, is Tennessee missing an awful lot? I mean, this no disrespect. I don't think so, because he's never been a player for you. He's never been a contributor for you. And so now you have Bargo at first base. If that doesn't work out, or if you're, banged up, or if you need a different look, you have that forced change. We're talking about on the offensive line right now, forced change, receiver, forced change. Levi Clark's going to have to play. Stone Lawless, who's going to play a hand in catching games this year, along with Cain and Peebles, he can play first base as well. There's a couple other guys as well that can fill in there, but Levi Clark's going to be a good one. Levi Clark and Dalton Bargo are very similar in terms of, well, Bargo's got more versatility with his glove, but it's the bat. Clark, it's all about the bat. It's where can I play him defensively? And the bat can play. I think if Levi Clark was your DH for 62 games this season, he'd do just fine. It's, can you play left field? Can you catch? Can you play first base? But he played a little first base in fall, and I think he's trying to get used to that as well. So I'm excited for more opportunities for Levi Clark this year. Wish Alex Perry the best for sure. He was very much in contention to be the starting first baseman this year, but I think it's always been Bargo's job, and I don't think nothing really changes with this news.
Something I've been wondering about, like you brought up Stone Lawless. There's a lot of buzz about Stone too, Eric. If you had to guess between, because like Cain and Peebles, I think we were all surprised that Cain and Peebles obviously did not have the 2024 season that he, I'm sure, wanted. Super talented kid coming out of NC State, but he did. I mean, it was Cal's job, and Cal ran with it and never gave it back.
Yep.
I mean, you have another talented guy behind you in Stone Lawless who is going to be pushing for opportunities. I mean, we've penciled in Cain and Peebles as the starting everyday catcher. I mean, do you think it's a possibility that we see more of a I don't know how to say this. Just more of a back and forth between Stone and Cannon early in the year, and this is a more true competition than I think folks might be anticipating.
I don't think alteration is a word. I just think it's simply alternating.
Did I just say alternate? Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Look, man, I've had one cup of coffee today, and it's just not enough at this point. I'm sorry. And
no,
also,
you sound like me trying to spew out nonsense on my show every single day. Trust me, I've been there.
We're both hosts, man. We're both natural play-by-play guys. Sometimes you understand my pain. Sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, dude. Stone Lawless he's a player. All right. If he didn't suffer that injury to his arm, in high school, he would have been drafted. Okay. He lost a lot of draft stock because of an injury in prep, and went for Tennessee, right? Got him to campus and all that. He's coming. And I think anyway, to your point about the alternating, I think that, right now I could see 4 games a week, 2-2, in my opinion. Stone gets one weekend, gets a Tuesday. Cannon gets 2 of the 3 on the weekend. If Stone's not producing and Cannon is, then, like Stark last year, maybe it's all you except for midweeks. We'll see what happens. But yeah, Stone Lawless, great reviews. Coaching staff's very impressed with him. His bat's coming along. Yeah, he's coming. So for Cannon, man, it's like, Tony got there in fall and said pretty much like, we asked him specifically about, I don't know, like, whatever position it was, maybe it was first base. And he's like, well, outside of Hunter Ensley and Cannon Peebles, we don't have any starters right now. So like Tony's already like, okay, Cannon's our guy. And everything Cannon did as a true freshman NC State at the plate, he didn't catch much. Everything he did in fall, everything he did in preseason, in January of last year. I mean, I was at some of those scrimmages, man. He hit like 2 home runs in the first 5 innings of one of the pizza series is what they call them, like the little 3-game series before the season starts. He was on fire. Season started. It's just like it just went away, and it's the darndest thing. So the ability's there, man, and everybody knows what Cannon Peebles can do. And for him, about finding consistency, everyday opportunities, I think it's big for him as well, just to kind of get in that rhythm. So, yeah, we'll see. But alternating, 2-2, 3-1, something like that. Stone's going to play this year. And if Peebles isn't ready, Stone's right there, and they're going to go with him. And he's also an option at first base, too. Stone Lawless, has got a mid down there, and he can give you a look at first base, too.
Final thing, I'll get you out of here, Eric. I think it's interesting that because like Andrew Fisher, I think we all agree he's just going to rake here. Like Andrew Fisher is going to rake it at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. I think there's a path to him hitting more home runs than Billy Amick at that spot a year ago. I think he's going to be more animated. I think they seem to have very different personalities. And Andrew Fisher just feels more like he just feels like a natural Tennessee guy. And I've thrown out that, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think this 25 team, based on the personalities here, is going to be the closest we've seen to the 2022 team in a while. I think there's some ball villain coming back in this 25 team in a good way. Like that team was obviously great, but I think this is going to be interesting in that respect. But the one that no one really talks about right now, and it was kind of a big get at the time, was Gavin Kilen. And looks like he's going to be your everyday second baseman with Dean at shortstop. Obviously, Dean, I mean, I think he's going to be a superstar this year for you. Great stuff with Dean, great expectations. Andrew Fisher, you kind of know what he's going to be for you. But Gavin isn't really getting picked up. Like he's just going to be like, what do you think Gavin's going to be ultimately for 25? And do you think he could be more of a star than I think people are anticipating him coming over and doing?
Yeah, the forgotten man. You're 100% accurate in that statement. I mean, it's like he was like, I mean, on 3, and I think even Baseball America had him as like, number 1, number 2, number 3 in the transfer portal, like biggest gets and all that. And he's a guy that's just going to hit, man. He's going to push 330, okay, consistently. He's a guy that's just going to hit and hit and hit. He'll hit some power. I mean, he'll probably have double-digit home runs, probably 12, 15 or so, which is good. Hitting towards the top of the lineup, I can see him hitting 2. 2 I think makes most sense for him. 2 or 5, we'll see. But
strong Ozzy Albies vibes.
Yeah, so I think he's going to be really, really good. It's just you got the power. I think Dean Curley's going to have a big power season. I think he's going to hit in the heart of the order. Fisher's either going to hit 4 or 5. It's going to be. I think it's some combination of Kilen, Curley, Fisher, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4. Then maybe Inslee 5. I don't know, whatever it is, but he's going to be really, really good for you. And again, I respect this move in fall. We'll see. They're going to start scrimmages, every day inter squads next week and getting ready for, the opener on the 14th of February. Curley never came off shortstop in fall. I mean, he was a true freshman, starting shortstop. Your team won a national championship. I mean, why, right? Don't mess with anything. He can play third base. He can play second base. There's versatility to Curley. If he struggles, slide Kilen over. Antiqua's also an option. We know how good he is defensively. If Fisher struggles in the hot corner, put him at DH, slide Curley over. There's so many different possibilities as well. But Keelan's versatility, middle infield, he played primarily all as shortstop at Louisville last year, played second base primarily the year before. I think he's going to be really, really good. And he's a guy that you're right, nobody's talking about right now. But in terms of being a hitter, on base, run scorer, I think that's going to be Gavin Kilen.
I love it. Eric, what can the good folks check out from you over at Locked On Vols and Volquest.com this week?
Yep, a lot of recapping everything football related from the 2024 season, transfer portal news, recruiting, looking ahead to some of those position rooms for spring practice, all that and more, and a little baseball talk, just like you and I did here. Opening day is less than a month away. Looking forward to that, all that and more over on Locked On Vols.
I'm so ready for it. I don't care. I think because the games and everything else, it's fun when you're the powerhouse. I feel like Tennessee baseball is just like how Alabama football fans have felt for a really long time. You just go into every year we can win it all every single year that Tony Vitello is here.
Everybody keeps saying year. What's more likely to happen, Omaha or Elite Eight or it's
like it's Omaha. It's always gonna be Omaha.
And I never want to say Omaha because it is just, it is so hard to win and to continue winning in baseball. It's so hard, but it's 3 of the last 4 years.
Yep.
I mean, it's what you can't not say Omaha now, right?
I mean, you enjoy it. You're the juggernaut. You're the Death Star of college baseball. And I don't know how long it goes for, but I am going to enjoy every single weekend that Tennessee is a juggernaut in college baseball. So, Eric Cain, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Hey, Chase, thanks so much, man.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.